Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today's review of the high-grade Blueframe 2nd L comes to you courtesy of Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all your Gunpla and Plamo needs here in North America. When you're checking out their vast catalog, be sure to use the promo code Gunpla Network to save 10% off at checkout. Before we start digging into the details of this, I want to say that this kit is good and bad. And I'll explain more and kind of give you a verdict later on, of course, but generally speaking, the kit itself looks pretty cool. It's an interesting design, the tactical arms are pretty solid, and then the decal stickers are pretty cool. I mean, they look good. On something this scale, the filminess doesn't really come off too bad, so it's nice that they're there. But on the other hand, the color correcting stickers are kind of terrible. There's only really two major culprits to that, but it'd have been nice to see a lot more of this be in plastic. But of course, this design has a lot of small colors all over the place, and I feel like they kind of did their best in terms of that being this complex. And then, of course, the tactical arms, while looking cool, kind of hamper a lot of the posing options you'll have with this kit just due to its size and design. But let's go ahead and take a look at the visual aspect. Now, just purely visually speaking, this is a pretty striking kit. The blue, the white, the black, and the orange all kind of contrast and complement each other at the same time. Now, of course, the orange is going to play off the blue pretty well as the black, but kind of works well with the white, and then the white, of course, plays off of the blue and the black as well. And it just provides us a really interesting color palette to mess with. This is something we didn't get on the base version of the Blueframe. None of the orange was there. And unfortunately, only two pieces, or I guess technically four, are orange on this kit. The tops of the shoulders and then the little orange pieces down on the thigh armor. It's cool that they're there. We have two really big orange stickers on the tactical arms, which understandably it's already complex and heavy enough. I don't think adding an extra orange piece would have really hurt that much, but I can understand why. They at least chose a really flat part to use the sticker on, so it's not terrible, but it's just one of those things it would have been nice to see. Now, in terms of a personal preference, the head sculpt I'm not a big fan of. Having the eye stickers not really fit super well, at least from my experience, kind of makes it look a little worse, but the chin strap also just is not something I'm big on. Honestly, feel like it'd probably look better without it, but I'm just not a huge fan of this head sculpt design. It's okay, it's a personal preference thing, but I think this probably could have been resculpted a little better, and probably works better on something like the Master Grade. Now, in terms of the shoulders, kind of moving down the body here, those blue stickers on the shoulders, not on the top, but on like the lower end of the shoulder down by the bicep, are awful. These are probably the worst stickers on this kit. I only used one half of them. I didn't use them on the other side just because these are like, there's so many surfaces they have to go over and they don't fit well, they don't stick well, and they look kind of shoddy, honestly. This is something I honestly wish Bandai would have included stickers for. It's not, of course, accurate to leave it white, but I think it looks better, and honestly, things like this are parts of what you could paint on this kit to really add a little extra flair. Now, of course, that's something you might have to work on, matching the color blue that's used in the plastic, or just repaint all of the blue. In terms of the arms themselves, they're standard Blueframe Astray arms. They look great. The little white stickers on the biceps work really well. They're a flat surface, they don't have to cover too much. You can tell they're stickers, but you know, it's neither here nor there. They're a fairly minor piece. I do have to say the torso I quite like though. The white plays off the black and the blue very well. You've got a nice spot for the serpent tail logo. There are two blue stickers on the torso. They don't match the color of the plastic in the blue, but they're okay. They work well enough. It's pretty solid, just visually speaking. I like that the blue pops through for the cockpit and then the vents. I will say here as well, the white is, and this is something that is not necessarily unique to this Astray, the white is a much higher gloss than the blue or the orange, so it does help give you a different texture in terms of what's given on the actual plastic. It's nice, it's shiny, it looks like it's harder than the blue plastic. It's just a visual thing, it's not actually any different, but it is cool that it's there. That's something I believe the red frame Astray and like all the other Astrays in the high grade line have. It's nice, it works, it's just something to point out. The waist is, visually speaking, okay, nothing wrong here. I will talk about some of the parts falling off a little bit later, so kind of keep that in mind, but it looks fine. Then the legs, solid, once again, blue frame, nothing wrong with these. The main body itself works well, it's just the second L portions that are a little bit more problematic. Now as we move to the back, the tactical arms looks great. The white is all in plastic, that's awesome. It's for the blade, it looks great. The orange being stickers, not that big a deal. You get some cool panel lining opportunities, and it fits fairly well on the backpack. And I will say the white stickers on the vents for the tactical arms are the second worst perpetrators of not really working super well. These honestly, though, I will probably leave just because it is really difficult to go back and coat these in white, especially with the high gloss that the white armor already has. So it's up to you, it's a personal preference. I don't think they look good, but I'm also not going to go back and do anything with them. So if you intend to paint or you just don't really care that they're there, I would avoid using them. Now, in terms of the usable posability, it's all the second L pieces that make this a problem. The base blue frame is fine. It's a very simple kit. All of its articulation works fairly well. I'd say the hips maybe are a tid loose, just from what I remember on previous Astrays and then this one. They're not terrible, but they're also not the most secure things in the world. The legs work fine. I've had the knee armor pop off every now and then, but you can glue it, honestly. It doesn't impede the legs' movements. The arms have a cool extra articulation gimmick that's really nice. They look great, but the shoulders are going to hinder the arm movement, which is infuriating when you're trying to pose with such a cool weapon. The tactical arms is such a neat and unique looking weapon system that you have so many things you want to do with it, and then the model kit doesn't let you, which isn't all on the base kit itself. It is partially on the tactical arms, and I'll talk in a minute a little bit more about that. But these shoulders, that little extra front white part could have easily been articulated. Just a little peg in there. It's stuff we have a little hinge on the back for a flap. We could have gotten a separate piece of plastic here, or had some kind of sliding gimmick or something just to get them out of the way. It kind of defeats the purpose of this kit, which is why personally I'm going to be leaving this in flight mode, as it's kind of the only mode that works well, that's stable, that doesn't just irritate me. I'm not gonna lie, this kit was a little frustrating. I think there's a lot of potential in it, but it is something that you will need to take your time when you're posing it. There are a lot of things that are really cool that are just going to get in the way and pop things off. For instance, the little knives, the armor schneiders on the hips, or on the thighs if you will, like to just bump into stuff when you're trying to pose it, and like to knock off the side skirts because they're on a fairly weak joint in there. They're just on a like a PC9 little peg in there. It's not super strong, and this is something I've found with a lot of the Astray kits in the high grade line. Those side skirts do not work super well. They're fairly minimal, so they don't really get in the way, but if you bump them, they're probably going to come off. The knives are neat, they're a cool inclusion, I'm glad they're here, but there's something you have to work around, is they're really not visually impressive unless you're going to like sharpen them and put some paint on them. Now, This is, I think, where the Blueframe 2nd L would have really benefited from having the shield and the beam rifle of the regular Blueframe. Because if you want it in just the normal flight mode, it doesn't really have anything to hold that looks substantial. But you don't get those parts, which I can understand since it has the tactical arms, but it would have been nice to see. Now, talking about the tactical arms themselves, they're cool, and there's a lot of great ideas there, but the execution on the high grade is difficult. This is definitely a kit that is not greater than the sum of its parts. There's a lot of really neat things going on, but they don't add up very well, and the tactical arms is a prime example of this, of it being the coolest part of the kit, but it is really difficult in anything but the flight mode to use. The flight mode works pretty well, it's fairly stable, the center of gravity is not too off to where you can actually have it stand without a stand in this mode, but when you try to get it into sword mode, you can put it in sword mode on the back, which is nice. I do appreciate that. So you can kind of make it look like the Blueframe is trying to draw the sword, but it's not really perfect. You can't really get the arm back there. It is hindered by that white piece in the front, and it doesn't reach all the way back there to grab it, and it's not in full sword mode, but it does look kind of neat. Once you have it drawn, though, the weight issues start to begin, which is why they include a little stand for the sword, which is nice, I guess. It's something that I like it when they do stuff like this, but at the same time, I kind of just rather wish they would have maybe reworked the arms, or maybe worked on the engineering in the shoulders more to make this a usable accessory, instead of having this really cool big sword have like 1 to 2 poses just because the model kit can't really handle it, so they include the stand. It's just a personal preference. I don't like to use the stands for things like this, but once you actually have it in both hands, it works okay. You're not going to get any cool swinging poses out of it. It's just too heavy unless you have some way of having the sword on a totally different stand that kind of can articulate and move with it. You're really just going to have it in a holding position, which is neat, I guess, and it really does sell how big the sword is, but it's not the cool part of being a giant sword. You want to be able to kind of have a slashing or swinging motion, but you can't really do that. Now, the other mode is the Gatling mode, which is fine, but this is probably... It's more stable because you can use the blades to pop into the ground, but I do wish the arms had more movement, and I don't mean the model kit arms, I mean the actual blades, or the arm blades, if you will, of the tactical arms. They're pretty much just on pegs, so they do rotate, which is nice, but it would have been nice to have some like little, at least a little up and down movement to maybe get them to where they can kind of angle out a little bit, because you have them angled very far forward in order to have this on just the ground. Now, you can put this up in the air, but then you run into the same weight issues with the Gatling position since it's not touching the ground. It looks cool once you've got it there, but as you can see with the rotation here, I decided just not to put the back of one of the hands on after a while, because I could not get it to stay on while holding the thing. Absolutely 110%, this is going to be a set and forget type kit. You find the pose you like, you just never touch it again. It's really nice visually, and I really don't want to talk bad about this kit, because I think once you get it there, it's such a striking design, it looks good. It's just getting it there is the problem. This is by no means a hand grenade to the levels of some of the early Rio grades, but for a high grade, it's not as stable as I'd like it to be. All in all, this is a high grade that has a lot of potential that just wasn't realized. There is a master grade version of this that I think probably gets much closer to being able to use all the cool ideas in the suit and in the design, but the high grade is really only going to be for fans of the Blueframe, honestly. It does have its cool look. It is something that once you get it in a pose you like, it's fine. But I don't think a lot of people are really going to take the patience for something like this to get it in that pose. Now, as you can see here with it going around with the red frame, it doesn't look all that blank compared to a real grade. So since we don't have a real grade Blueframe 2nd L, if you're a big fan of the Astrays, this will work with your real grade red frame or your high grade red frame or any of the variety of Astrays that exist out there in high grade or real grade. It's a visually impressive kit that just has some issues in terms of its execution. It's not necessarily the most posable or the most stable, but it does have some really unique features like the Gatling gun and the big sword. They're really cool, they're unique to this kit, and I think that's where people kind of get this kit in their mind of being like, ooh, this could be cool, I could like this on my shelf. And it's really just those Astray fans, honestly. This is something that I'll recommend to Astray fans all day, but if you're really looking for a fun, posable, stable high grade, I would say there's other places to look. And if you're wanting an Astray in high grade, there are other Astrays to look for in this line. But if you want something with a cool Gatling gun and a big sword, well, look no further because it's really kind of your only option. But generally speaking, there's potential here, and putting a little work into it, I think, could go a long way. I don't know that I'm going to go back and mess with it, honestly, but generally speaking, if you want to put a little bit of paint and put a little effort into the posing, I think you'll be pretty pleased. If you've built this, let me know in the comments down below if you had the same difficulties that I did with the posing, or if maybe it is just me. If you haven't got this kit, I will try my absolute best to answer any questions you may have. Just leave those down in the comments. If you've enjoyed my 15 minutes of rambling here, absolutely leave a like and subscribe. You'll hear more of my rambles in the future, I'm sure. And of course, check out our other content, such as the news, our lore videos, our podcasts, all of that fun stuff. But for the Gunpla Network, friends, I've been the Spicer. As always, stay safe and keep on building.